Mississippi different from Iowa?
Many ways. And it still is, even going back now, which I've done twice in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, the weather is very different. It's very hot, especially in the summer. But there's just a very different feeling about Mississippi. And I think the thing that I noticed the most was that there were so many African Americans there. Because, especially growing up in Iowa, you know, just in the big cities, that's the only place you see African Americans in Iowa. But in Mississippi, in the country, you know, farms, rural Mississippi, small towns, some small towns were mostly all blacks. So that was kind of the first thing in terms of the civil rights movement that I noticed. And then the way people move and the sort of pace of life is very slow. I think that's because it's so hot.
Yeah. So
I think that's why they talk that way too, because it's hard to talk. It's hard to talk fast when you're so hot.
Yeah. So like in your first 48 hours.
What I noticed was, first of all, I was trying to make sure that none of the white people knew that I was a civil rights worker, because if they did know, they'd get very angry.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we were in danger all the time of people finding out what we were doing. And the other thing was just that, you know, this was the first time I'd gone any place by myself. And so I was, you know, introduced into this office where I worked. And it was all new, the people were all new. It was a dangerous situation. And then in that first 48 hours, I found out that the 3 civil rights workers who had been missing, they found their bodies. So it actually, within my first 48 hours, I found out that other people like myself had been killed. So it was a very, I would say, shocking first 40 people if they could find them. And so these 3, within the first 48 hours that I was there, we knew that they had been killed.
How did you feel like when you found that out? I mean,
Oh, it was surreal, as they say. It was everyone in the office. That was the other thing, is that normally, had I come in at a different time where I was working and been introduced, people would have, you know, been thinking, oh, here's a new person, and, you know, being more friendly. But because everyone, it wasn't just me that found out they had been killed, it was everyone. And the office where I worked was where they worked.
mm-hmm.
So that this town that I was sent to happened to be the same town where they had been working. And so everyone there knew them. And so everyone had just found out that these people they had worked with were for sure dead. So it was...
like from your own family, or like how are they similar to your family?
well, there were more similarities than differences. I mean, it was a wonderful family. The thing I liked was that they had these 3 little boys, because I just had an older brother. And so for the time I was there, it was like having these 3 little brothers, and they were always coming into my room and bugging me and wanting to talk to me. So it was wonderful. It was great. And sometimes I've just been reading. I kept a journal while I was there, and I've been reading that lately. And you know, things. I'm glad I did that, because I'd forgotten things. But one of the things I said in the journal was that some nights I would come home from work and I would help. Alice was the lady I lived with. I would help her fix supper. And then after supper, we'd sit around the table, just she and I, talking. And we had some really good conversations there. It meant a lot to me. And I actually got to, we're still in touch, because when I went back 5 years ago for this documentary, I had lost touch with her, but I found her by going through the phone book in Meridian and just calling people. And so we went to her house. She invited us over, and we went to her house. And I got to see her and talk to her again, and we've been in touch since.
So does she still live in the same house?
She doesn't live in the same house, but she still lives in Meridian. And she had 3 more children after I left, so she told me about all her children.
How did your fellow friends respond to the racial tension in Mississippi?
I think it was mixed again. Some people thought it was wrong that we were going down there and that we didn't belong there and that we shouldn't have. A lot of people thought we were just stirring up trouble, and other people thought it was good because afterwards the Civil Rights Act was passed, the Voting Rights Act was passed. So actually the work that was done actually accomplished something.
So you felt like what you were doing was worthwhile.
Absolutely.
How did the white people in Mississippi react to, your support for just equal rights?
Very poorly. They didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like it at all because it upset their way of life. They had kept everything separate. People were very prejudiced in the South and in the North. So they didn't want to be told that to go to the same schools. Schools weren't integrated; they were completely segregated. And white people wanted to keep it that way. Plus, the people that were really opposed to the civil rights movement, people in the Ku Klux Klan, they just unreasonably hated anyone different than them. I don't even think they knew why. And so it was a threat to them. It was I think a lot of those people felt that by keeping black people, as they called it, in their place, it made them feel more important. And that if everybody were equal, how were they going to feel important? So they really didn't want this to happen.
So all the problems and experiences you faced in Meridian, we believe that they was worth your energy.
Absolutely, yeah. Because so much, schools were integrated then in the 70s. The Voting Rights Act was passed so that black people started registering to vote. And when that happened, then started running for office. So a lot of small towns where there were white people running the towns, then they started some decisions being made by black people who'd been elected too. So it made a lot of changes, and they had to take down all the signs. You don't see those signs in the South anymore.
So when they took down all the signs and stuff, how did you feel?
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
That's how it should have been all along. It should never have happened. And the fact that I could live in the North and not know that this was happening in the South. And then it turned out, and you might be interested in this because you're doing oral history on Iowa, is that recently I was speaking in southeastern Iowa, which is down here where we are, and found out that when I was a young girl in the 40s and 50s, and my grandparents and my uncles farmed in southeast Iowa. I didn't live here, but we visited a lot. And it turns out that when I was growing up as a young girl, black people couldn't eat in the restaurants here in Iowa. They couldn't go to the theaters here in Iowa, had to sit in the balcony. Marian Anderson, have you ever heard of Marian Anderson? She's a very famous African-American singer. And she was singing somewhere in Iowa when I was a young girl. And it turns out they wouldn't let her stay in a hotel. I think this was in Burlington. And you know where Burlington is?
Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
okay. They wouldn't let her stay in a hotel there. So she had to stay in the home of an African-American family. And this is when I was a young girl. So there were the same things going on in Iowa without there being signs up. They were still going by those same things that were happening in Mississippi. So when I found that out, I